Okay, so we are on day 2 of Mishlei 23, 13, and 14. Let's review. Al timna mina ar musar ki takenu b'shevet lotamu yamus ve'ata b'shevet takenu v'nafshu mishol tatzil. So do not withhold rebuke or discipline from a youth when you hit him with a staff, because when you hit him with a staff, he will not die. You should hit him with your staff, and you will save his soul from the grave or from Gehenna, as Mitzudas said. Okay, so our questions were abundant. What is na'ar in this context? Is it just a stam youth, or is it is it a neutral personality? Is it a type of fool? How young is young? Can you separate other people or include other people in this category? What is Sheol? Okay, is it literal death? Is it Gehenna? Is it like pain and suffering? How does hitting save him from Sheol? 4, what are the parameters and limitations of this method? And what does that tell us about what's outside of these parameters? In other words, if you go too far or too, it's saying hit him with a staff and he won't die. So what do we hold about going beyond that? And if you do less than that, hitting is a very extreme thing. So if you do less than that, is that even in this thing? Also, is this an ideal method? There are many other pesukim in Mishlei which state that corporal punishment should only be used with fools. So why here? Is this talking about a specific scenario where you it's a dire situation? Okay, 5. What is the hava-amin of Yud Gimel? Is it that you shouldn't hit him because you think he'll die, or is the havamina that you shouldn't hit him or something else? Why state it in such extreme terms? And also in Yud Daled, is it that you think that you won't save him from the Sheol? Something like that. All right. 6, is this even talking about literal corporal punishment? If not, what's the nimshal? Like we said, is it just harsh rebuke, something like that? 7, what does this type of mussar aim to achieve? So it says, you'll save him from Sheol, but is that what your goal is, or is there a more localized objective? Is it just regular Mishlei? Is it a specific behavior you're trying to get him to stop doing? And is there a reason why this only focuses on prevention of the negative instead of positive development? 8, what does nafsho mishol tatzil mean? Is this a long-term outcome, or is this what you're trying to do in this specific instance? 9, what is the relationship between the two pesukim? Why are they both necessary? 10, who is the audience of the pasuk? Is it limited to a parent or teacher, or does it extend to other authority figures or something like that? Okay, so our idea, I believe, and fill me in if I'm missing anything, is that this pasuk is talking to someone. Hey, you're still here. I guess because you don't have school. So our idea was that this is talking to a parent who is hesitant about giving discipline to his kid, not necessarily hitting him, but even a harsh discipline, because of the pain that the kid will feel. And the parent equates that pain with killing him, emotionally, you're killing him, Frank, you're killing him. That was the Seinfeld reference I sent on the chat. And so that's a fine concern, that you don't want to kill your kid. But what are you actually going to do if you withhold discipline? Is you're going to kill your kid, right? Is you're going to be setting him up for, first of all, at the very, very least, you're going to risk him remaining in the error that you were trying to or in the habit that you were trying to that you were trying to discipline him for. So he's going to stay in that, and that's going to cause him harm. It might literally, depending on how dire it is, cause him to die, right? If we're talking about reckless behavior or bad life choices, it might cause him pain, both the pain from the behavior that you failed to stop, and the pain from going through a childhood without any discipline, and then having the rude awakening when reality disciplines him or society disciplines him. So the feeling is good that the parent wants to spare the kid from pain, but the way to do that is to focus on the long-term pain, not the short-term pain. Yeah.
Just, I guess, kind of adding to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So in regards to question 5, how it relates to the pasuk about the fool, or maybe
a 4. The pesukim in Mishlei about the fool. Yeah.
So I'd say one thing that the fool and a child or a youth have in common is that they don't think critically.
Right.
Is a lack of critical thinking.
Yeah.
And so therefore the way to improve their thinking would have to be through uncritical methods.
That's a good point. Right. Yeah. So what's the current, I know there's a number, but what's the current thing about the part of your brain that regulates impulse control isn't fully developed until
prefrontal cortex.
Prefrontal cortex. Yeah. What's the, mid-20s, right? Yeah. Mid-20s, right?
But there is a stat that that the adult is not 100% fully developed until 30.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
If you find it, let me know. But I've heard the thing. I definitely know the thing about the prefrontal cortex. So what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah. So the point that you're making is there are certain things that he literally can't do through self-regulation based on knowledge, that he's going to need that assistance. How far the na'ar goes is a good question. Maybe it's a good thing that our society in some ways extends adolescence until you can people don't go out on their own as adults until they're in the mid-20s now. So maybe in some ways that's good. I don't know. But we also made another point yesterday, which is based on the Rabbeinu Yonah's definition of a na'ar, that what makes you a na'ar is that even though you have bad habits, you are under the dominion of an authority figure who can punish you and discipline you. And the habits aren't set because you haven't been keeping them for many, 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 many years. But at a certain point, your habits are going to harden and it's going to be much harder to change. And then when there's not an authority figure above you, then it's going to be much easier for you to remain in your bad habits. So that's answering Ariel's question about how far can we extend this? So to a certain extent, anyone who's under your dominion, even if they're an adult, but it's going to get harder with age. Yeah. Okay. Anything we're missing from yesterday? I think that was the main.
Is that part of it because of their behavior?
Yeah, I think I think it's two things. One is habits in general. The longer the habit goes, the harder it is to undo, but then I think also when you're an adult, when you're a kid, there is a certain, even though there's also a cockiness and arrogance in terms of I know what's what. If you're somewhat self-knowledgeable as a kid, you realize that you change a lot. When you're young, and so you're more open to change. You're still trying to figure out who you are, but once you become an adult, then you have a certain idea of this is who I am, or you start to rationalize your behavior and your way of life, and that adds ego to it, and it becomes much, much more difficult to change,
you
because of that.
Justify your actions based on who you are.
Yeah, this is just who I am, I'm just this kind of person, or you attach a philosophy to it, whereas kids not necessarily gonna have a philosophy. This is how I should be, and you're really not.
Usually I tell them, now with that attitude, if that's
right.
how you're gonna present yourself, and that's
right.
Then you'll never.
Yeah. Hold on, I just found I see your hand, Isaac. I just found saw a new one yesterday. I was gonna post this in the self-improvement chat, but I think it was during shiur, so I didn't, and I forgot. Hold on just a second. I think I have to sort this by date.
If WhatsApp can schedule texts.
Oh, I should do that. Yeah.
Do they have that?
Oh, I don't know. I think I've always wanted to do that because it would make my life much easier.
Yeah, so it is. Oh.
Yeah. I think it's the most recent one. Oh, it's not the most recent one. Did I not save it here? No, I didn't save it here. Oh yeah, I did save it here. This one. Wait, hold on a second. You gotta move the thing because the punchline is at the bottom.
Do you make this?
No, I didn't. I just found it. What, is there a way to close the previews?
Mm-hmm.
Let me open it in Paint.
Yeah, something like that. Default that.
I definitely prefer. Yeah. Yeah. So those of you who are, I guess, more on the closer to the 30 side can probably relate to it much more, but it's only a matter of time. Yeah, but that's how it goes. So I do think that the problem is that
I don't really get it.
So this, I should describe it for the audio. So, who's this? This is Chris Evans.
I think.
Yeah, right. So there's a picture on the wall, 15-year-old me looking like this, know-it-all, and 22-year-old me thinking how stupid I used to be, looking at that picture, and then the next frame is a 30-year-old him looking at a photo of the 22-year-old him looking at the 15-year-old him.
Yeah, I got that, but is he also saying how stupid?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the point. So what was I going to say? So I think that the older you get, the more you justify your own behavior, and it makes it harder. So not only do you have the resistance of habit, you also have the resistance of ego. Isaac.
So I think another thing about the na'ar is that specifically someone who's living in his parents' house.
Yeah.
he's very used to having to adjust his behavior because of what someone else is telling him.
Right. That's also true.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
That's a good point.
like I'd say, like, if like every so often, and like, his parents are like, come on, you need to take out the trash. Like, why didn't you do that? Or things like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just like the normal, like, parent-child interaction, when
Right.
they're like living there. So like, so he's still he's like much more receptive to like someone telling him something and then that changing his behavior, because
Right.
there's just a pattern of thing he has.
Right. That's a good point. So in other words, Isaac's saying that it's not just that your father rebukes you when you're at home. It's that the whole environment is set up with many, many, many instances of someone else regulating like the decisions and routines in your life. So it's like fertile ground for changing your behavior, in that sense, because it's just like it's part of the territory, so you're much more used to it. Whereas when you leave your parents' home, then it's much harder to like, then there's gonna be much more resistance because you identify as independent, Okay, so I just want to read Sadigon because it's very similar to what we did, just so you can see it in one of the Mefarshim. And again, most of the Mefarshim said what we said, so I don't think that's a surprise. He says, so he joins this with pasuk 12 also, which was, bring your heart to Musar and your ears to words of knowledge. He says, this is the side you're going on here, not in the packet. Inyan havia kan hataya. So bring your heart to Musar means incline your heart to Musar. Okay. Shahare shataf bo oznacha. Ufish yada shiesh kan tchuna nikras chemla. Since we know that there's a certain quality a person has called compassion. We brought min ha'av bno, and especially with the father to the son, kava kan mashiyamo negda. So the pasuk here is aimed to oppose it. Okay, not to oppose chemla in that way, but he's saying, "Ba'amar im ata choshesh." If you are worried, talking to the father, milha koso l'chancho penyamus. If you, the father, are worried about hitting your son to discipline him because you'll think he's going to die, you got a promise from the guardian of souls, that's God, that education will not kill him. Okay, and again, it is crazy. Parents think, if you ask them, they don't actually think they're killing their kid. They just don't. So many parents just don't want to say or do anything that's going to cause their kid to be in pain. So they react as if it's killing them, And if you are compassionate on him, milar osu nistar, because you don't want to see him suffering, you should know, kibitzar hamuad hazeh hanishkach ata misalik tsar she'eno nishkach. I like the way he puts it. With this little pain that will be forgotten now, it will remove the pain that will not be forgotten. So I think your example with your son is good, because you literally forget the pain that you experienced crying as how old was your kid?
5 months old.
5 months old, right? So like you feel like this is a terrible thing when you hear him crying. He's literally going to forget that. But if you didn't like train him to sleep, then it's going to cause him like years of pain, a lifetime of pain, theoretically, that like he won't forget. So yeah.
Like Mila.
Yeah, like Mila. I was thinking the same thing.
He'll never forget Mila. I was like, he'll forget Mila.
He'll forget Mila, yeah.
But he will never forget if you talk to Mila.
Exactly, yeah. Right. Yeah, so that's another thing also is that, and again, I from my own perspective here from being a high school teacher is, sometimes it's very, very hard to like let the 9th grader learn a lesson the hard way. But they literally forget it by the time they're in 12th grade many times. Like I'll be like, do you remember like that whole like ordeal in 9th grade? And they'll completely forgot it, or they'll do like the picture thing, like, oh yeah, I was so stupid back then, Yeah.
I would guess that another reason why parents may hold back from rebuking or disciplining their children wouldn't necessarily be for the child's sake of like, oh, it's gonna hurt him or her, whatever. It might be more like they fear that the child will resent them.
Right. Yeah. It's going to hurt the relationship.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing also that will, if it is a healthy relationship, then not only will the resentment be short-lived, but like I mentioned yesterday, once they become more mature and see that, that the tough love like helped them, then they'll be thankful for the fact that like you related to them that way. And it'll strengthen the relationship.
Right. But I mean, there's obviously like a threshold, I would say, because like the more authoritative you are, say, the more you risk the act of rebellion.
Right. There's definitely a way to do it. And there's also an age to stop. And that's the, that's another point that I think is a bit of a controversial thing today is, at least the way that, that Torah sees it, I remember Rebbe talks about this in the parenting tapes, which is the most important thing they should ever listen to. And I believe Rabbi Fader said this at the bar mitzvah of his son, of Ezra, that once the kid is 13, then the parental role changes, which is we are now not exercising authority over you in that way, but we're here for you as a guide, but this is when you start making your own decisions, and the parent really should take a different role of being a wisdom guide instead of a disciplinarian at that age, but again, it's all messed up now because of the way that adolescence has been prolonged, and I don't know how to sort that out.
Well, even though adolescence is prolonged, that's on a societal level, but within your household you don't.
Right. There is a certain, it depends on the household and the society. You can set your own standards for your kid, but it's going to be in conflict if all of his friends are experiencing something different than he is, or whatever. It is doable, but there's obstacles there too.
Are you guys learning about the staff as that has to be literal?
No.
Right.
Yeah. I just didn't finish reading Sadigon. So what is the tsar that will not be forgotten? Kagon anshe b'nei adam, like punishments from people, right? So shelo yirtzach v'yigno v'yarshia v'az yilake b'shot v'aser v'kala v'yatale. Okay, so he'll murder and he'll steal and he'll be evil and then he'll get whipped with and he'll be put in jail and then he'll be hanged. Okay, it doesn't even have to be that severe. It could just be if you don't discipline let's say, dumb example, you don't stay on top of your kid to make sure that he gets his homework done. So the consequence of not getting homework done is not that big. But if you don't get your work done for your boss, you get fired. So if you don't train him in being able to meet a deadline and do things he doesn't want to do when he's young, then he's just going to be in a perpetual state of unemployment as an adult. Also, the punishments of Hashem, so you don't rebel against his word. Okay, so you say you'll get a hashgacha punishment in this world and burn in Olam Haba. I don't know what Sadigon's shita is on Gehenna, but yeah.
It's another topic.
Yeah, sure.
Not what the pasuk is saying. It's a nice side benefit.
Sure.
From this. Then also, for yourself, if you want to look good to other people, if you allow your kid to just go off and do whatever, then you'll end up looking really bad. If your kid winds up being the one who's going and murdering and stealing all that,
yes,
you look like a really bad parent.
Right.
So even for yourself, even if you don't care about your kid, whatever, for your own sake. Right.
That is, and that harkens back to the first proper pesukim in Mishlei of which we quoted yesterday or whatever. No. Ben chacham yisamach av uben ksil tugas imo. A wise son makes his father happy, and a foolish son is the sorrow of his mother. That this is parenting advice, but it's parenting. You ask you ask your average Jew, why do you want to raise a good kid? So typical Jewish answer, so they'll be a good Eved Hashem, and they'll keep halacha and be a good person. I want them to be a good person. What does Mishlei say though? And they say it with the pursed lips like that. Mishlei says, because you'll be miserable if your kid turns out to be a jerk, and you'll be happy if your kid turns out to be a chacham. It's nice to make him a good person, but that's not a Mishlaic motive. The Mishlaic motive is you don't want a kid who's living in your basement and getting in trouble with the law, mooching off of you. That's the Ben Ksil. You want someone who's as Rebbe says on the parenting shiur, the purpose of parenting is to help facilitate the development of a child who's fit to cope with reality. That's that's the best thing a parent could want. Rebbe Chait, yeah. Yeah.
I think one more fear that I can think of in terms of disciplining your child is especially being seen doing it in public.
Yeah.
I guess just to give a little example, I was telling the story the other day. I worked in a day camp over the summer, and there was one kid who he would fall, and I'd be like, "Are you okay? What happened? You need whatever."
Yeah.
And my boss, who was the head of the division, saw it, and she happened to know this kid, and was like, "He's fine. Come on, toughen him up." And wouldn't you know it? He would fall like on the daily and always like overreact. And eventually I had to be like, okay, you're good. Come on, get up. And there was another person, maybe like a middle schooler at the time, who saw me do that, and he went like, was furious with me.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you do that? Like, he's hurt, obviously he fell. And I'm like, he's fine.
Yeah. Did you bust out the anti-fragility flag? Yeah. On a related note, even though I'm about to give an example that's the opposite of this, I think that there is a certain resilience and anti-fragility that a parent needs to have because of how they're going to be viewed. And I've seen this most. I mean, there's lots of good parents in our community, but like there's different parenting styles in our community. And I think like my favorite example has been watching Jessie parent her kids, and for her, it's the opposite of her knowing what's good for her kids and other people looking down on that. But she has to like be confident in her knowledge that this is going to be, like, again, use a simple example, not any controversial. Well, maybe it's controversial. Like her kids didn't like wearing shoes, right? I don't know if they're still in that stage, but they don't like wearing shoes. So they just never wore shoes, even in the winter, right? And like, and so people will like look at her, how can you let your kids go out without shoes? And like, she knows it's like what, it's not like they can regulate their own body temperature, I why make this into a zone where I'm like enforcing clothing on the kid? What do you want as an adult? You want the kid to learn how to like know what clothing to put on to suit his own like needs and comfort level. And so like she can tell you her whole philosophy or whatever, but like it takes fortitude to like have other parents like looking down on you, thinking that like you're ruining your kid because you're not dressing them properly. But like that's her shita that like at a certain age they can dress themselves. So like this, I think it's an important thing. Okay, new idea, Rabag. Okay, hold on just a second here. So Rabag said, oh, this is the wrong pair. That's why I'm not finding it. 23.
I think Isaac has a question.
Oh yeah, Isaac.
Yeah, just about that point.
Yeah,
that we talked about the social.
Yeah.
Richard Mitchell in The Gift of Fire has a good point about that, like, like what people think is, like how people approve or disapprove of your parenting and what is good for the child is just, I guess this is what we're saying. It's like two different things. And also we're talking about is like being socially acceptable and being a good person are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
And if you don't like, think about that, you're just gonna default to like,
you're gonna let society parent your child.
Yeah.
Right. And that's never gonna turn out good. Yeah. I shouldn't say never, but often bad. Okay, Rabag on our pasuk says, Al timna mina ar musar. So he says, so I think this is a different idea. Mipnei tzirus yamav. Do not withhold discipline from the youth because of the youngness of his days, because he's young. Ki haka'ascha oso b'shevet tishmerenu shelo yamus misas haguf below yamav. So by hitting him with a staff, with a rod, you will guard him to not die a bodily death. Below yamav, before his time, and you will not kill the component of him through which it's possible to gain eternal life. So this is answering your question about why does he use the term Sheol, and why, let's say with Gehenna, obviously Rabag doesn't hold by Gehenna, but he holds by Olam Haba, so I think that there is a new idea here. He's saying that basically you got to discipline him so he doesn't have a premature bodily death. Okay, I think that fits in with what we were saying before, and so that you don't kill the part of him that gets eternal life. So can you see what the new idea is? Anyone want to take a stab at what the new idea is? Yeah.
Can I say something? Also, something is a new, different halamina. I don't know what it is, but it just sounds like it's different.
That's possible. Also, I wasn't thinking that direction, but that's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
This seems to be fostering his ability to practice restraint.
Okay.
And say, so here I feel like if he wants a toy, you're not going to give him that toy.
Yeah.
Then he has to be okay with just not getting everything that he wants. And then with that, then what I'm taking as in the pain of then like working on yourself and not allowing doing things that will be work on yourself and things like involving yourself in with things like that. Things that are not animalistically
Yeah.
what you would go toward.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I have a different formulation, but I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
I mean, there are two like just obvious things that he's saying.
Yeah.
First of all, he's saying nar is someone who's young.
Right. That's true.
He's also saying that Shaul doesn't have to mean one or the other. It can mean both.
That's also true, right? It does seem like he's getting this from Shaul, the dual usage of Shaul. Yeah, Zach?
So it's interesting because it seems like he's implying that you can lose the part of yourself that can get olam haba,
Right.
And that parent can have an effect on that.
Yeah.
What comes to mind, I don't know if this is what he was saying, but what comes to mind is like the exercising of free will.
Yeah.
And so you can foster someone who's intentional or reactive. And
Yeah.
if you're absolutely reactive, then you've like lost all intentionality. And you're not
Right.
gonna, like, make
Yeah, that fits in well with David's point.
Mhm.
So I was thinking a different thing, which is I think that the question is, who is your real son? Right? Is it a body or is it a soul? Okay. And what I thought of was I immediately thought of I realized I don't use this feature enough on all Torah of the personal notes, is I should totally put quotations that I associate to on the notes of the pesukim. So I associate to Marcus Aurelius in book 4, chapter 8, what does not make a man worse than he was, neither makes his life worse than it was, nor hurts him without or within. Okay, so that's the Stoic definition of harm, which is harm is that which makes you a worse person. Benefit is that which makes you a better person. So when you hit him, you are causing him psychological pain, but psychological pain is not the same thing as human harm, right? Is harm has to do with with who you are as a Tzelem Elokim or as a free will, agent, as a soul. And if you're hitting him and causing him physical pain, or like chastising him in a way that's causing him like psychological pain, is going to make him better as a soul. So you're not even harming him, So I'm saying that I think the idea here is it's a misidentification of who the person is. If you dent a car, you're harming the car because the car is a physical entity, right? If you physically hit a kid as part of discipline, or if you cause him emotional pain, that could result in harm to the soul. But if it's done properly, it's only causing physical pain or psychological pain, and you're benefiting the soul. So I think it's like a misclassification of who your kid is and what the standards are for harm and benefit. Okay, yeah.
Interesting thought on that is that I think that if a parent, let's say, punishes a child,
Yeah.
like out of mistake or error,
Yeah.
then there's two ways to handle it. One being worse than the other. If they like say, "Oh, that was my mistake.
Yeah.
I apologize," then all that the child suffered was like a temporary like psychological pain.
Yeah.
But if they try to insist and say like, "No, I was right. This was the true thing,"
Yeah.
even though they were wrong, then they're forcing a framework of reality that is false, which is causing them a more long-lasting.
Yeah.
damage.
Oof. That causes me pain. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, and this could even be applied to like personal growth
Yeah.
as well. There is also like a fine line between exposing yourself or your child to harm and pain,
Yeah.
and just exposing them to discomfort.
Right.
So like on a personal level, let's say like there's a big difference between trying to improve yourself through putting yourself in very like harmful situations, as opposed to getting exercise, which
Yeah.
is very discomforting and
Yeah.
exhausting, but it's not necessarily harmful.
Right. Yeah. That's a good example of that.
Exposure therapy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I just have a question. All of this is under the premise that you know your child, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you
Because,
don't know
like,
your child, I don't think you
Because
can
can't-
successfully discipline them.
Yeah, I don't think you can. Meaning, like, I don't think every kid. Will
I mean, this
have-
is the I think this is from an authoritative source about the Rav and his. So people know about the Rav and people know about Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, but a lot of people don't know about the Rav's older brother, right? Shmuel Soloveitchik. And so I think I this is, if anyone hears this, what was it?
I didn't know this person existed.
Yeah. So if anyone can like verify or confirm the details of the story, I heard this like through someone quoting it. I didn't hear this from the Rav himself because I've never spoken to the Rav. But someone asked him like this brazen question about like, you became a genius and like your younger brother like became a genius. Like, what happened to your older brother? And he said, my father used to be very like, this is like in brisk, right? So very like makpid on like our education. And not only like were we expected to like give the right answers, but if we said the answer in one too many words, we got a potch, and if we said it in one too few words, we got a potch, you know. And my older brother couldn't take the potches, you know. So like, but apparently like for the Rav, like that did work or something like that. So like you got to know your kid, you know, and see whether or not that's a whether or not the method you're using for this kid works for the other. Like what works for one kid might not work for the other
funny.
kid.
I'm from that story.
Yeah,
I'm learning it a little differently also. Like,
Yeah.
like it's also, you know, like the kid. I think the Rav is also saying that like him as a kid. I mean, himself, he was able to appreciate that and grow from it. Like some kids can't do that, so therefore I think he was just saying that like I think he was just better at accepting it, right?
you could say that. I mean,
That's what it sounds like.
it could be. I don't know if that's the case. I also just want to add one more thing. Also, just the Rabbi Moskowitz point here is that Rabbi Moskowitz's theory of parenting is that you're raised by four parents, right? There's your father's conscious and your father's unconscious, and then your mother's conscious and your father's unconscious. So there's a lot of stuff going on that, and I'm obviously not psychoanalyzing Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, but like there could be things going on where I'll quote someone, I won't even quote his name, someone in the community had who has two daughters, and he once had a meal. He said to his oldest daughter, he's like, man, if you had been a boy, I would have totally destroyed you. He said like my psyche would have like related to you in a completely different way, and I would have completely ruined you. So you could see a thing where like if this, people relate to their firstborn sons differently. It could be that disciplining your firstborn son, there's going to be unconscious stuff that comes out that is not going to come out in the same way to your second son or your third son.
Sure, there's a whole study on that.
I know. Yeah, I know. You preached before. Yeah.
A counterpoint or just a question?
Sure.
It doesn't say your son there, it doesn't say like yours.
That's true. It
just
says
says a youth.
Yeah, right.
It sounds like you should be disciplined from the pasuk, at least specifically. It just sounds like you should be disciplining any youths you come across.
Just go out on the street. Yeah, where are some youths? Yeah.
I have a friend whose parents immigrated from Greece.
And yeah.
She says that her dad tells stories of how there would just be like these women who would go around the village, like older women who would just like hit kids for like doing
That's funny.
thing.
I mean, look, I think if it's culturally acceptable, like there are cultures where like all parental type figure. Oh, there's a scene in Mad Men, which is in the I think this was still when it was in the 60s, and like it's a birthday party with like little kids, and like one parent sees like this other kid, who belongs to a different parent, like run and like knock something over, and the parent just takes the kid and slaps the kid, and like I guess that was like acceptable in the event, and I mean, so I think plain shot is it's talking about your son, but you're right, it doesn't say son, and then this could be other people. I want to give one more idea before we stop for today. I think this is a completely different approach, which is in the not the Malbim. Oh, Ho'il Moshe. Okay, so this is a new commentary that the Altar added. This was a student, Rav Moshe Yitzchak Ashkenazi, who was a Talmid of Shadal. So he says, Al Timna, he says, Ukadesh benecha bigedulasam yaviu libam benikle lemusar yasrim bialdusam. In order that your child, when he grows up, can bring his heart easily to musar, you should rebuke him in his youth. So he's connecting this to the previous pasuk. The previous pasuk says, bring your heart to musar and your ears to imrei das. But in order for that to be the case, for your son, you need to discipline him when he's young. Okay, so I was thinking about this, which is that like, do I want to pair this with something? Hold on. I think I wanted to pair this with. No, maybe that was the idea. So I don't know if this is what he's saying, but this triggered this thought in me, which is, how there's the Chazal say, Al Tomar don't say that when I'm free, I'll learn. because maybe you won't become free, that people delay like learning until a later time, and then you end up not learning. Like you say, oh, when I'm done with college, then I'll learn, and then when I get like it's just a certain point in my career, then I'll like set aside time for learning. Oh, then when I retire, but then by the time you wake up and it's 50 or 40 years later, and like you did not live a life of learning, and now you don't have a desire to learn, you don't know how to learn, or to shrink it in a smaller scale, you got a certain limited number of years in yeshiva, like, and if you don't go to morning seder, afternoon seder, and night seder, and like, oh, well, I'll learn later, then before you know it, you're out of yeshiva, and those are the only years that you're gonna ever have like this, and then that's it, So anyway, I think people do the same thing with their kids, right? That because of the resistance to disciplining your own kid, you're like, okay, I'll let him off this time. Like I won't like discipline him. We'll worry about it later. Or like, oh, when he's 5 years old now, like I'll wait till he's 6, and before you know it, the kid is 15 and you didn't discipline him through his entire youth. And then when he's 15, he can't bring his own heart to Musar. And so he's not going to like learn it, and I think that the connect, this is like what you two were saying, that in order to be able to exercise your free will and your self-control, to be able to like learn Mishlei and like engage in introspection and like think about stuff, then you need the assistance when you're younger, being imposed from outside. So if your hope, like, I do think there's another havmina that parents will say, oh, like, I don't want to do this. Like he'll do this himself when he grows up, but you have to equip him to be able to do that when he grows up. If you don't do that when he's young, he's not going to be able to do it even if he wants to. And that's like a problem. Yeah.
Another thought that is triggering is that, like, in the same way we can make ourselves open to Musar, it's not just giving them Musar so they're used to it when they're older.
Yeah.
But then it adds another element, which is that as a parent, you can teach them how to take punishment.
Right.
So you can explain.
That's a big important thing too. Yeah.
Can be useful to you, like
right.
Learn from it, appreciate it. Don't take this as just like, oh, I'm awful and like,
right. Yeah. They take it personally. Right. Yeah. Having a there's terms for this in Josh Waitskin's book, The Art of Learning. Yeah, I don't remember. One more point also is I think Moshe Alsheikh, who I also don't usually use, said that there's two havaminas that this is addressing. One is that, hold on, see, he's long, that's why I typically don't use him.
Let's go for frustrations.
That's Bruce Lee, Skill for Frustrations. Yeah. I mean, maybe he quotes it also. But he says, Altomar ki ese libni anichenu ben aruso asher oz libo mimzimus narus asher lo toos ad yigav ye kone le. Oh, this is the one I was wanting to quote. All right, fine. He's saying, I'll wait till he grows older, then he'll get mitos. All right. There's another idea that he actually, it's him also. He gives a second try. He says like this: "O Yomar, have you? Hine efshar shiyim yimna ish miliaser v'hakos es hanar b'no echad mishay sibos." There are two reasons why you refrain from disciplining your kid. Echad ula lo yikabel. One is you think he's not going to, it's not going to affect him. Two is mechamlas olav, is because of the mercy on him. Okay, and he goes and elaborates on that. So each of the pesukim is refuting that and saying, "Oh, you think that this is not? You think that this is you refrain because of compassion. Don't worry, it's not going to kill him. You think this is not going to affect him? No, it will save his soul from the grave." And so I thought that I like just the categorical approach, that there are two reasons why a parent doesn't discipline the kid. You think, oh, this is not going to matter, or it's going to hurt him, and this is refuting both of those. So just something to think about there. Yeah. You want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah. So I know someone who I was like in his house for Shabbos or something, and this is my first time ever meeting him.
Yeah.
He had like these little like straps or something, like the Rambam straps.
Yeah.
And like you could see that like he really like hated doing this, but like, this kid like acted out, like he would like give like a little like like hit, but like he really didn't want to. Like you could tell he was probably more like a gentle parent. So,
yeah.
He's like, okay, it's the Rambam. What can I do?
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm surprised. Oh yeah, Isaac.
I have an example, another example, but if people need to go to more,
if you need to go, you can go.
Yeah. So this is it was during like peak pandemic when when it was just like not known how like what the consequences would be if you got COVID. So I know someone who was the mother of a teenager who was I think reasonably like telling her teenager that she couldn't do like large social events in in the same way as before, but a lot of teenagers' friends were just doing that type of thing as if there wasn't a pandemic going on, and it was actually really hard for the mother because her teenager was really upset about that, but we were I was talking to her about why were the parents of these other teenagers fine with it, and what we thought was the most likely reason was just that it was just too painful for them to be telling their kids that they couldn't do this, because for teenagers hanging out and being social is their life, and so so they were just letting them
right, yep,
yeah,
just have a hard time saying no. It's bad. Yep. All righty.
yeah.
Have a good day. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good day.